and getting home and just focusing on home. That's what the song's about, and who makes home worth coming home to. And for me, that's my girlfriend. We've been together a little over 10 years now. And, you've got to, when you get home, I just, I turn the router off as much as I can and focus on, just us, which I think is, I try to do that before I leave and when I come home to kind of bookend the whole tour.
Bar, New Year's Eve. I hear a laugh across the room. It calls to me and pulls me in. It leads me straight to you.
Welcome to the Marinade, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. Each episode, we welcome musicians, actors, comedians, authors, visual artists, anyone who creates art to talk about how and why we make stuff. This is episode 187, and our guest is Matt Andersen. Matt is a singer and songwriter from New Brunswick, Canada, whose career has spanned over 20 years, and somehow, despite his work being very much in my wheelhouse and truly incredible from top to bottom, I'm just now learning about it all. And for that, I'm grateful. This man's voice, his playing, his writing, it all shines on each of his records, and especially so on his new album, The Hammer and the Rose. The Hammer and the Rose was released on April 25th, 2025, and it is squarely already on my 2025 superlatives list. Before I get to my conversation with Matt, I want to thank 3 new Patreon patrons. Yo, I'm stoked for this. Bob Beatty, Seth Gill, and Tom Romito have all joined our Patreon community. Hopefully I said your name right, Tom. Thank you so much to all 3 of you. Thank you to everybody who supports the show on Patreon, patreon.com/Marinade podcast. If you would like to support the Marinade financially and enjoy some bonus content, more on all of that later. But for now, I don't want to delay this any further. I am ready for y'all to hear my conversation with Matt Andersen.
You're the only light shining through, not the stars in the sky or the shadows of the moon. Oh, tonight belongs to you. Oh, tonight belongs to you.
How you doing?
Hey, Matt. Great, man. How are you?
Good, man. You can hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Perfect.
Thanks for doing this. I'm really excited to talk with you.
No problem. Thanks. Sorry for all the jumbling around.
Man, it happens. Not the first time, won't be the last time, and it's all good. I'm fun employed at the moment, so this is my full-time job. So
perfect.
We can record every day if you want to, baby. Oh man, how you feeling? I'm in Orlando. I'm in Orlando.
Oh, okay, right on. Nice.
Yeah, I'm in Florida. But yeah, how you feeling? It's release day. Your wonderful record, The Hammer and the Rose, which I can't wait to talk to you about. How are you feeling?
Good. I mean, release day's weird nowadays. It used to be, hopefully see them flying off the shelves, and now you hope people are downloading it. But it's still great. Lots of good comments coming in, and lots of little flash ups popping up. So yeah, it's good. Always feels good to put it out in the world.
That's great, man. Yeah, it's interesting. I just full transparency. This was my introduction to your music, and
cool.
I don't know how that's possible because this is my shit.
Right
like I'm very into this record, and I found what's been cool about it is that you've got this huge body of work that I wasn't aware of, and now I've had a chance in preparing for this conversation to get to go back and listen to it. Man, you've made some incredible stuff, and
thanks, man.
I think from what I've heard, even stacked up against all those great records, this is the best thing that I've heard of yours. So congratulations, man.
Thank you.
There's so much that I want to talk to you about. And one of the things that I noticed as I was listening to the record is the writing itself and how rich the writing is. Most of the songs on the record are co-writes, it seems. So I'm interested in that process. Is that your normal process? Are you normally comfortable with co-writing, or do you write in a solitary way?
Co-writing comes become more of a crutch than anything over the last few years.
Mm.
When I started out, I did my own writing, and then I started to find that if I wrote a whole album by myself, I started to rip off my own ideas. You start to kind of sound like yourself a little bit too much, and co-writing is a great way to get out of that. I find people whose stuff I love to listen to, or stuff I really dug, and then just kind of let that kind of bring that influence in. And it's when you're co-writing with somebody, it's an automatic editor right beside you. If you're working with somebody who you trust, both of you, it can be great. You kind of cuts through that. Like, is this good or is this not? If both of you don't like it, then it's a pretty good chance it's not meant to be on there. So it's yeah, I love writing with other people. I love how they influence. And but on this album, a couple of tunes I stretched out and did on my own, which I haven't done for a while, just solo writing. It felt good to kind of stretch those muscles again.
If you do it on your own, do you have people that you bounce it off of? Because it sounds like that editing is really important to you and having another voice is really important to you. So if it's just a solo write, do you have people you send it to or you get their ears on it?
Um, it depends on the song. Sometimes, I mean, it's just I want to make sure it's saying what I want it to say. Which when you're writing by yourself, it's easy to fill in the holes. And then, well, when somebody else listens to it, they don't have the same information backlogged in their head to kind of to fill in those spaces. So when it works for somebody who doesn't have all the information I have in my head, that's when I feel like it's landed. And I don't do that very often, but there's a couple of people who I don't mind sending stuff to. And I don't want people who are just going to say they like it because I sent it to them. It's got to be somebody who's going to tell me if it sucks or not.
How often does it suck?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff on the cutting room floor. I
Yeah.
think for everybody, it's like anything else. Some stuff works, some stuff lands, some stuff doesn't. And you just gotta, but you gotta work to find the good stuff, I think.
Okay, so you have this huge body of work, like I said, and I mean, it's just banger after banger, like just incredible records, man. And so it's quite a bit of output, over the
Mhm.
last, you know, I mean, when was your debut record? Like 20 years ago? Is that fair to say? How
Yeah,
long?
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, almost 20 years ago, maybe. That's a lot. That's a long career, and especially to do it at such a high level. Are you sitting down every day to do the work? What does your process look like?
For writing, I'm more of a necessity writer.
Mm,
It usually ends up being an album is like in that 1 year to 18 months kind of cycle.
mm.
And for me, I'm on the road quite a bit. I still keep up the pace of, 100 some shows a year or better. Sometimes it's up to close to 200. Um, and that's just it's so by the time I get to the point where I don't, not that I'm not liking singing the songs, but I kind of get, I don't know, you sing them a lot, so you kind of get bored of them. You kind of want to get some new stuff in there. That's when I start to get the urge to really sit down and write. Like anybody, I've got ideas jotted down and little bits in my phone, but to actually sit down and work on stuff, it's kind of like I get the itch, and when the itch comes, that's when I start to write.
You mentioned being on the road, and man, you are a road dog. It seems like you're constantly out there from what I've gathered. I really hope you make it to Florida one of these days. I know everybody always says like come to my town or whatever, but I did notice that we're not on your stop on this most recent tour, but I keep hearing such great things about your live performances, and then I've watched some videos about and seen the power of the live performance. What I guess kind of two questions, and the first one is like that's I mean think I read somewhere one year you did like 200 shows, something like
Mhm.
that. That's a lot of fucking shows, man. So I guess like one, what is the driving force behind that? And then the second thing is like if you could talk about the creative process of the live show.
Yeah, the live show, I've always, for me, I've always gone by the mode that you have to, if you're not playing, people aren't going to hear you. And
Mm,
word of mouth is still the best way to get heard. I'm not the kind of artist who has a lot of radio play. I get podcasts and specialty programs, that kind of stuff. But as far as regular rotation, that's not something I really have at my advantage. So it's got to be the live shows. And I also feel like that's the best way to see somebody. If I had the choice to say, here, you can hear me on a record or see me live, I'd send people to the live show every time.
mm.
And yeah, and I also love touring. I love being on the road. I'm lucky that I love it. People who don't really love it, it's a hard slog, I think, to go out and do that many shows. And as far as the process for it, I try to keep it just as chill as possible. I don't get a whole caught up in there's a lot of presentation and flash I think that can go to a live show. And for me, music was always a very humble thing, just people in a living room or a kitchen kind of playing songs. So I just try to take that to the stage. There's not a big no pomp and circumstance. I don't really enjoy encores. I'd rather just stand up there, say thank you, and play another song. Walking off and walking back on. It's just the first time I'm sure it was cool, but after a while, when you expect it, it kind of loses its loses its pizzazz a little bit, I guess, for me.
I think a lot of artists are going away from that. I go to a ton of shows, I mean, one of my great passions is live music, and
Mhm.
it's my church, right? I mean, that sounds cliche. I know a lot of folks say that, but it's just the truth. That's sort of my connection to, spirituality or whatever, is nature and live music. And I feel like a lot of people are going away from the cliche encore, which I'm here for, like
Mhm.
play me your whole, like, go ahead and play your 2 hours or however long you're going to play.
Yeah.
And then I don't need you to, go backstage and pretend.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
get the house
There's
music.
so many people make set lists and they put it encore at the end, which I don't know. I think for a while it was cool, but for me now, it's especially, when you're a small folk club of 150 people or something like that, where you're walking off stage and standing at the back of the room waiting for an encore. It's really not the same thing as, Springsteen out there and walking off and people cheering for 20 minutes to bring him back on kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I mean, one time, uh, this is many years ago, like 2012, I saw um, Amanda Shires and Rod Picott at a restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida. And it was like back then you had to like call and leave a message to reserve your ticket, right?
Right.
Is that kind of thing. And they played a killer show, both of them. I mean, they're both great live. And, even though this was many, many years ago, they were both already, well, I guess Rod had been doing it a long time, but Amanda was still kind of relatively new, at least in the public consciousness, to doing the solo thing. And for the encore, uh, Amanda just sort of like walked out into the crowd and stood next to me, and then she went back up, and it
Yeah.
was kind of funny how that it is kind of funny how that works. So, man, I really hope to catch you live one of these days soon. There's so many songs on this record, this new record, that just blow my mind, and I'd like to ask you about a couple of them. There's a
Mhm.
2 song run right there in a row that starts with "Tonight Belongs to You," and that song lays me out, man. I keep coming back to it for whatever reason. Can you talk about that song and how it came together?
Yeah, that one with a buddy of mine, David Miles, and he's the guy I love writing with him. He's the guy to go do a tour for a feel good, turn the lights down kind of tune. He's just
Mm.
perfect for that kind of thing. And I mean, that tune, I mean, I spend a lot of time on the road, and for sure, coming home, it's easy to bring the road home with you, still think about the road and be getting ready to go back on. And, and actually have to take somebody else into consideration is different because on the road, it's all about me, which is, kind of a thing that's, no, you can't bring that home with you, really, if you're any kind of a decent person. So, and getting home and just focusing on home, that's what the song's about, and who makes home worth coming home to. And for me, that's my girlfriend. We've been together a little over 10 years now, and
Uh,
you've got to. When you get home, I just, I turn the router off as much as I can and focus on, just us, which I think is, I try to do that before I leave and when I come home to kind of bookend the whole tour.
Man, okay, so that's so good to hear, but I get that. Like I think about compartmentalization of things quite a bit. And I try to keep my life pretty compartmentalized. Like if my day job typically is as a middle school teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
so I just quit my job, but I'll return to teaching at some point.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I like to have like between the hours of 7:30 and 3:30, I
Mm-hmm.
am the teacher, and that's
Right.
it. Like I even leave my phone at home usually when I go to work because I want to give that work 100%. But at 3:30 when they stop paying me, right? Like
Yeah.
I am fucking done, buddy.
Right.
Like I go home and I'm gonna make some dinner and I'm
Yeah.
gonna exercise and I'm gonna listen to music and watch a film and whatever the thing is that's going on that
Yeah.
podcast, whatever's going on that afternoon. And for me, there, like I said, I have those mechanisms in place. Like for example, leaving my phone at home when I go to work so that I'm not blurring those lines.
Mm-hmm.
The road is like a completely separate thing, though. You're out in the world,
Yeah.
traveling, doing your job. You come home to your girlfriend in your home. Do you have like practices that you go through to make sure that you're present? when you get home?
The biggest thing is I say yes to everything when I come home. Pretty much, I get home. It's like, do you want to go visit friends for supper? In my head, I'm thinking the last thing I want to do is leave the house. But yes, let's go visit some friends. Let's go to a movie. It's just putting yourself. When I'm on the road, it's for the most part, it's all about me. It's like, what time do we sound check? What time do we play? What do I want at the gig? How do I want the gig to go? That kind of stuff. It's all a lot of those things are, a lot of things in place to make me happy, which is a really fortunate position to be in. But when I come home, I'm second. I try to put myself second as much as I can.
Man, that's great. What a fucking great attitude. And I'm sure she appreciates that too. I mean, thinking about that just as a lesson for relationships, putting the other person first is a transferable lesson, not just when it comes to like coming off the road, but
Yeah.
I would think that would be useful not only in a romantic relationship or a partnership, but also just in a work environment or like, is there a transferable lesson there in terms of on the road? I guess maybe I should ask you this question because I haven't seen you live. Do you usually, is it just you solo acoustic usually, or do you have a band with you?
For the most part, it's just solo acoustic. That's kind of my bread and butter. I do some band stuff. With the new album, we'll do a band tour next year. And through there's some festivals and that kind of thing, bigger stages. But for the most part, it's just me and the guitar.
Okay, so are you like tour managing yourself, or do you have?
No, no, I've got a tour manager that goes with me, and
Okay.
like on this next run, we've got the opening act. He's in the van with us too, and our buddy comes out to summer. So there's four of us in the van. I've
Okay.
definitely done a whole lot of touring with just me, and then just myself and the road manager for a long time. But as things go along, and our buddy wants to come on the road and see things, so he sells CDs. So.
Okay, so what does that look like? Those lessons from putting your girlfriend first when you get home, which I think is so fucking great. But like, are there transferable lessons on the road? It's interesting how you said that, how like it really is about you, right? You're the draw, you're the person people come out to see. So how do you navigate, like, what are the differences in those relationships in terms of your mindset and how you approach those relationships?
For me on the road, I mean, I'm aware that it's all about me, but I try not to abuse that fact until I
Uh,
have to. You
uh,
have to, because you could really, I could throw a fit on every gig we went to and have demands and have things that I have to have in place. But rolling with the punches makes the whole day a whole lot easier for everybody. So, if we hit a snag, we just, and my tour manager is great. He's the same headspace. We try not to kick up a fuss until we have to.
all right, that's so great. And I'm fascinated by that too because I mean, I get to talk to artists all the time, and some of them tour quite a bit. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is BJ Barham of American Aquarium. American Aquarium used to do like 250,
Right.
sometimes 300 dates, and he doesn't do that much anymore. But he's constantly on the road, and I just think that's so interesting, being able to balance. Because like I went to Miami for a night and I lived by myself and I came home and I was like I got dishes and all these things. So it's amazing to me that you guys go out there and do it, go that hard and do it so much. With this record though, returning to the record, the right after Tonight Belongs to You is You're Here to Stay, which is another one that lays me out, man. Um, can you talk about that song and how it came together?
That was a co-write with four other people, which is something I usually do. But it was Tom Wilson and his son Thompson, Tara Lightfoot, who's a really good buddy, and Jesse O'Brien, who we bring in because he's just great lyricist as well, but also just a killer keyboard player and brings up music ideas that none of us have the capabilities of bringing out. And yeah, but we're all in essence road dogs, and
Mm.
also all kind of loners, I think, which is a lot of musicians are. And for me, that song is when I'm in situations that I don't like being in. I'm happy being a fly on the wall, but my girlfriend keeps me from being the fly on the wall, which is an asset. So it's yeah, just kind of leaning on that person that keeps you sane in situations you'd be uncomfortable in or don't want to be in, or just you aren't yourself. You can be yourself, but one person in the room that can makes a big difference.
Did it take you a while to get to that point, or was she someone who was like able to bring that out of you right away?
No, I mean, I've always kind of been able to realize when I'm getting too far inside myself. You can tell when you're standing in the corner, haven't talked to anybody for 20 minutes, and half the bowl of chips is gone, right? You can tell when you're kind of getting into that zone.
Uh-huh.
And she's also really great at picking up when I'm in that kind of mood and when I'm not digging what's going on. And she's pretty cool to give me out lots of times.
That's cool. So what was music like? At what point did you, again, this long career with this incredible, all these incredible records, all these wonderful songs? At what point did you, like in your life, did you go, "Oh, I'm a songwriter. This is the thing that this is what I do."
Ah, for a long time, I did the bar scene and did cover tunes.
Mm.
And then I knew to get out of that scene, if I was going to have any kind of a career, I'd have to have original music. So that was kind of the spark as far as like writing my own songs. And, being a songwriter is still something I struggle with. It feels like, every time I hear something somebody else writes, I'm like, oh man, that's the level I want to get to. So I don't know. I guess that's what keeps me working is wanting to be better at it. But I guess once you start to get paid for it, you kind of start to realize that maybe that's what you're supposed to do. I don't know.
Who are some of those people that you're talking about? Somebody that writes a song and you're like, "Oh man, all right, I want to get there."
I mean, Bruce Coburn is one that goes to of stuff that I listen to. Jason Isbell. I mean, every time somebody plays, like, "Hey, check out this too," and it's like he's just nailing it. And it's
Yeah.
it's 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 writing. It's also just writing songs that I don't write like that. And it's when somebody's doing something that I don't do, I don't know if I can't do it. It's just that I don't do it, and it's always kind of that's inspiring too. To see somebody who's doing something the same as me, but completely different. A whole other approach to it. And yeah, so those are a couple dudes for sure. I love story songs, and story songs aren't always my strong suit, but that's why lots of times I co-write. I find story songwriters and hook up with them to kind of try and pull the stories out.
You mentioned that's great, man. And yeah, and I recorded another episode of the Marinade earlier today, and we went on a whole Isbell tangent.
Right.
So like, so yeah, I can definitely relate. I drove up to Nashville to see him play solo one night. I was just like, I like it only fit in my schedule, and I drove all the way to Nashville for one night to see him play the Foxes in the Snow, solo tour at the Pinnacle. Just him and acoustic guitar. It was unbelievable. Um, but you mentioned when you started out playing bar gigs. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually. That because I have, I'm most of my friends here in town are musicians here in Orlando, and we have a pretty cool underappreciated singer songwriter scene here, and a lot of folks who are incredibly talented. And several of them feel like they're this close to the next step, right?
Right.
The national tour and
Mm-hmm.
having fans show up in Minnesota or something. They're not quite there, but it's like almost there. I feel like I have several close friends who are in that world, and they still do some cover gigs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're trying to kind of wean themselves off of it because they want to take that next step. Do you think that that cover gig kind of life is necessary, or do you think it's possible to bypass that?
You can. I think it's a slow burn. I think that's what kept myself, I'm sure a lot of people, from making the jump from, the comfort of a cover gig. You play songs that people want to hear. I mean, you can just look at a list of top 40 songs online and play those, and you'll be working every night. But when you go to just your own stuff, I mean, it's a harder pull for people. And for me, when I switched, it was like I had to say no to gigs that I could get paid at, to playing gigs that I wasn't going to get paid at pretty much for a long time. He's got to build it up. So I do know some people that have sworn off and said they wouldn't do any cover gigs right from the go. They didn't want to do that kind of thing. David Francie, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Mm.
A writer up here and performer, and he always said, I don't want to do bar gigs, and he never did. He just stuck to his guns. He did carpentry until he could just go out and do his own thing. And yeah, I don't know if it's a necessary part of it. For me, it was. It's where I cut my teeth. I think
Mm.
it's how I built my live show, for sure. It's how I learned how to read a room. You can tell if people aren't digging it pretty quick when they're full of booze. So it's there's kind of that. There was definitely advantages to it, and it's also it kind of set me up so I could take a few hits on some gigs and have my work on my own stuff.
Man, it's interesting. I like my I mean, I write songs but it's something that and perform them, but it's a relatively new thing that I'm taking seriously. Like in the last 7 or 8 years, probably, I guess. I didn't really start taking songwriting seriously until my late 30s, and then in the last year I've taken it really seriously. Like, but I kind of skipped. I did skip that bar gig thing. I don't know very many covers. Like
Right.
if I have the chords in front of me, I can play Atlantic City.
Right.
But like if I just grabbed my guitar right now, I'd be like, I don't fucking know. I don't like
Right.
I know there's an E minor in there. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it's just, you know, there's like three songs I can play, covers I can play, and they're all like deep Skinnerd cuts,
Right.
that like nobody at a bar wants to hear,
Right.
you know. Like I couldn't play Sweet Home Alabama, but I can play All I Can Do Is Write About It if I'm three sheets
Right.
to the wind. But I have been thinking about that a lot because I do think lately I've been trying to learn some covers so that I
Mm,
can do some bar gigs. And what I've found so far, and this is some advice that a friend gave me that is proving true, is that learning songs that people know that are like classics. Atlantic City is a great example. I have been trying to learn
mm,
Atlantic City, and you understand the construction of the masters, like
mm.
how they got there. Is that something that you were aware of or that you think was helpful for you?
For sure. When I first started doing my own stuff, you get to the point where, you're doing mostly covers and throw your own stuff in every once in a while. And then when I first started playing shows under my name was like for a ticket charge, I had maybe 10 original songs. And that wasn't enough time for a night. So I started to pull in cover tunes that would at least complement what I had. If I didn't have a real ripper, I'd get something like that. If I needed a ballad, I'd learn a ballad kind of thing. And just, and I definitely learned, if you can give something people they can latch onto, you can kind of hang on to them for a few more tunes again.
Mm.
It's just kind of,
Mm.
it's almost like if you're talking to somebody and they're way smarter than you and getting into the deeps of, space travel or something like that. You don't get that. But if they suddenly talk about, I don't know, Captain Planet, something that can bring you back into it, or Krypton, or Superman, something that you can relate to, then you can kind of start to hang on to it a little bit more. So I definitely use that tool quite a bit.
Oh, that's so interesting, man. What a helpful tidbit there. And that's a great analogy too. Yeah, space specifically, because like you start talking about space, and I'm just like, that freaks me out. It's too much. It's
Right.
too complicated. But I do have a friend. I think you made me think of a specific person, one of my best friends, Tanner, who does know that shit, and he's able to distill it for me. Now, sometimes he's
Mm-hmm.
still talking over my head,
Yeah.
but he's able to distill it for me in a way that I'm like, oh, okay, well, this unfathomable thing, I get it now. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
true of songwriting too, is that, if I listen to a song like Tonight Belongs to You or You're Here to Stay, or really, man, any of the songs on this record, I'm like, how the fuck did he do that? Like, because it does feel like alchemy or something. And then to relate it in a way, to play a cover, say, that everybody knows or can connect
Mm-hmm.
to, and then you hit them with something like those songs.
Yeah.
Um, Man, that's a really helpful lesson.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, that's definitely a tool I use when I play in places where English isn't the first language too. Tunes they recognize can definitely make the night go in your favor a lot better than leaving them guessing what you're saying for an hour and a half.
Dude, that's really interesting. So, yeah, I was listening to when you were it's been years now, actually, I noticed, but when you were on the Trailer Park Boys podcast,
Yeah, right.
um, it's funny. I didn't know anything about those guys, and somebody made a joke. My friend Sarah made a joke about how I was dressed one night and said that I looked like the guy with the glasses. I don't know the guy's name, but
Bubbles. Yeah.
Bubbles. Yeah, she said that. She's like, you look like you're dressed like Bubbles, and I had no idea what the reference was. So when I saw that you were on this show, I was like, oh, I got to check this out now because apparently I'm Bubbles. So I listened to that, and I think he specifically asked you about playing internationally, and you were raving at the time about Scotland
Mhm.
specifically. I guess I've never really thought about playing places where English wouldn't be the first language. What are some experiences that you've had playing in places where English isn't the first language? And can you say more about like how to navigate that?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I've got the experience of the bars came in handy then,
Mm.
depending on where you were. If there's a crowd that wants, especially if it's non-English speaking, lots of times they're picking up more on the vibe than the actual lyrics. Lots of times, they're getting it, but I think it's going by pretty fast for them. But so those are times when I rely more on the guitar playing or the vocal stuff. Do the big voice thing, and we're throwing a couple covers that they're going to know, and then again, it kind of just sets them up for if you're doing your original stuff. And yeah, and it took a long time to get used to different countries, how they react to music. I love playing Scotland. They're a lot like home. You play something you think is cool. If they think it's cool, they let you know right away. First few times I played in England, if they think something cool, they don't tell you till the end of the show. Because it's almost like you're sitting there playing to a wall of. It seems like they just aren't digging it, and then I realized, if they're tapping their foot, that was them on the edge, and I had them. So you just had to learn how to read different rooms.
That's so interesting. I wouldn't think that about England, but I know like I I worked I lived in Holland for a few months
Mm-hmm.
and I had an externship at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia when I was in law school. And so we traveled quite a bit through Europe and saw shows, and I was blown away by like Belgian audiences, for example, who will just sit there very quietly,
Mm-hmm.
take in the music, and at the end of the song, then they let you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
And I think that's like as a performer, how because I would imagine like I mean, I know what American audiences are like, right?
yeah.
I'm one of them. So I know that we're typically incredibly interactive,
Mm-hmm.
almost to a fault sometimes, right?
Right,
Sometimes
yeah.
we're too, we need to shut the fuck up a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, how comfortable are you sort of performative code switching like that?
Once I learned what the differences were and what to expect, the first couple of times I played audiences, like you said, like just stand there and it's intense. I'm standing in a place where there's standing room in a club, which at home playing in a club like that automatically means there's going to be people chatting, there's going to be beer glasses broken, all that kind of stuff. There, it's they're so focused in, it's intimidating. It's almost like everybody has X-ray vision on you. Like if you, there's no room for there's no hustle bustle to hide behind. It's just you out there. And once I got used to that, I look forward to it. It's great. I
Mm.
love playing over there. It's the fans there when they show up for a show, they're showing up for the show. There was no distraction. They aren't showing up to talk with their friend there. They don't want a friend that talks. They want a friend that listens with them.
And as a fan of music, I'm that way too. And as a performer, I fucking hate it when people are talking. And it's something I just have to
Mhm.
get used to because I'm playing bars, it's my
Right.
songs, but like
Hmm.
people are sometimes not there to see me. They're there
Yeah.
to drink with their friends. And so
Yeah.
I'm pouring my heart out about the woman that left me, and somebody's like over in the corner having a little chat, and I'm like,
Yeah.
motherfucker, I'm bleeding up here for you. So yeah, I'm definitely one who prefers that, but I think that's interesting. Like I like how you said that you have to kind of get used to the differences, right? And just accept that like culturally, it's like this here, it's like that there.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing. Are Canadian audiences and American audiences dramatically different?
Not really. No, I mean it can be from venue to venue, even night to night. In the same place can be different, but for the most part, North America kind of feels the same all over. If somebody shows up and it's a quiet sit down show and somebody's talking, it really stands out. But if you're playing a club with a band, you're only part of the event. You're not the event, kind of thing.
What was your musical education like? Like, were you playing music from a very early age?
Yeah, I grew up in a pretty musical family. So that was my first exposure to music, was playing with my parents or playing with my mom, my
Oh, cool.
grandfather. He played fiddle, and so there was always music in the house. But as far as like actually learning things, that would happen around grade 5. Tuba was my first instrument, like school music programs, and picked up trumpet and played some drums and bass. I had some lessons on the guitar. I never really had any lessons. I was just had a couple of cousins that taught me quite a bit. Sat in with some guys at the Masonic Lodge at home, a country thing every Monday night. That was where I learned a lot of stuff. And I was right at the cusp of when tab was starting to be a thing online. So I dug into the internet quite a bit and used my ears and just watched hands, I guess.
That is really cool. What were some of those songs when you started to play guitar? What were some of the songs that you were learning?
CCR was a big one. It was big into them. The Eagles was one for sure. A lot of their stuff. Lots of 70s classic rock kind of stuff. Strummy stuff was what I was into. And got into, I mean, as a guitar kid with a guitar, Hendrix was definitely a hero. And Clapton, his Unplugged album was a big one for me. Yeah, and a lot of it was just playing with people. I'd watch some guys around home who, you know, could do stuff that I definitely couldn't do and try to copy it when I got home. I was the kid in front of a stereo with the headphones on, playing all the Tragically Hip records, that kind of stuff too.
Oh, cool. How Canadian.
Right.
That's great. My buddy, shout out Ben Montgomery of the Records Revisited podcast. He's going on a family vacation. They're going to Canada, and I forget the name of the town that Tragically Hip's from, but
Kingston.
Kingston. That's
Yeah.
right.
We all know that. I
That's right,
don't.
Kingston. Yeah, yeah. I got kind of into them later. Like I
Mhm.
still every time they come across my algorithm, I'm like, oh, I love this. I need to dive into the Tragically Hip, and then I forget about it and I do something else. But that's one of those that I need to revisit because every time I listen, I think it's so cool. But anyway, he's going to Canada with his family, and they're going to do Toronto, and they're going to do Quebec City, and all that kind of stuff. And they're stopping in Kingston, and his wife was like, what are we stopping in Kingston
Kingston.
for?" He's like, "Don't worry about it. It's just a cool town. There's stuff to see." But he's just an obsessive, Tragically Hip fan, so
Awesome.
he's gonna the one bone he's getting from the trip is he's gonna go see the town that they're from. That's awesome, man. That's really funny. What about the greater scene, like where you grew up? If you've got the family,
Mhm.
that's huge. What a like incredibly valuable thing to have like your mother and grandfather playing music and then including you in that whole process. What was the greater scene like around you? Like you mentioned that you were playing with other people.
Mhm.
Like, what did that all look like? Did you have a bunch of buddies that were playing music? Was it cool to play music?
A lot of the guys I played with were all like in their 40s and 50s. I had kids my age, and the thing I did at the Masonic Call on Monday nights, that was just a bunch of dudes playing old country, Merle Haggard and that kind of stuff, just passing a mic around a room, and I'd sit there and strum along. I didn't sing; none of them knew I sang. I didn't know I sang really at that point. Just kind of sat in and playing a lot of community picnics and curling fun spiels and all that kind of stuff and parade days and just playing those kind of gigs. I'm from a town of about 1,500 2,000 people, so it wasn't a lot of opportunity publicly, but a lot of opportunities, like I said, in living rooms and kitchens and parties. And that was
Curling,
where I kind of
curling what?
curling curling fun spiel. So it's just like people who don't curl would get drunk on New Year's Day and curl. Pretty much is what it was. Is really the
That sounds awesome.
it was a hit, man,
So
for
like
sure.
that's
Yeah.
happening and you're like playing
For,
working man's blues or something in the
Right. Well,
corner.
yeah, for the teams that weren't playing on the ice, they'd have the bar was open and you're up there playing tunes, kind of thing. And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity like that, and was really fortunate. There was a lot of great players at home. Um, a lot of guys who just did the bar scene forever, and never made a life out of it, but they could have if they wanted to take that path, or they just they were chose to be normal and then just play guitar for fun, kind of thing. But lots of great people to learn from, and as the scene expanded, I always found more and more people to surround myself. And anytime I put a band together, I make sure I'm the worst player in the band. You always surround yourself by people who are better than you, and that's always worked for me. It's a way to keep learning and a way to get better for sure.
Oh man, can I relate to that? I mean, especially like I told you, it's such a relatively new thing for me that I take songwriting seriously. And a lot of folks that are a whole lot better than me and have been doing it a lot longer have embraced me
Mm-hmm.
and let me, open for them or play with them totally out of my league, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like playing with them, I've learned so much. I mean, just like seeing how they carry themselves on stage, watching the way that they seamlessly are able to just jump into one of my songs that they've never even heard
Yeah.
before. Like that's so intimidating to me to jump into somebody
Mm-hmm.
else's song, whether singing or playing. But people that know what they're doing and are really good at it, it inspires me because I want to be around people that are better than me to lift me up.
Absolutely.
Um, you mentioned when we were talking about just now when you were talking about like playing with these guys and you said they didn't know you sang and then you kind of caught yourself and you're like I didn't know I sang. Your voice is one of is perhaps the most powerful instrument on your records, and I'm very interested in like at what point you kind of went, oh wait, I can sing.
uh, it's still getting to that point. There's
Mm,
still a lot of people I listen to that when I hear them sing, it's like, well, that's again, that's the goal. Same with songwriting. There's always somebody better, and there's always somebody who I don't ever want to be the best. I don't think I would enjoy that position at all. It's pretty great being having people be inspired by. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I started singing out at home when I was a kid, and people clapping you're a kid, but I think that's because you're a kid. It's up to that stage.
Yeah.
Unless they're bastards, they're going to encourage you. And in the bar scene, I was really good at making myself sound like other people. For a long time, from doing the hip tunes, or we did a lot of Counting Crows, and or Jim Croce or Stan Rogers or Gordon Lightfoot, whatever came into the mix. And so I was more of a mimic for a long time. And when I started writing my own stuff, I realized that, you know, you've got to have your own voice, and kind of hard to find that when you've had somebody else's for so long. But once you start putting your voice for your own words, that definitely helped me think what I've got is my sound. But at the same time, my voice for me is like my guitar. I can change the tone on it. I can change the vibe. But what this whole album was kind of about, we softened it up quite a bit from the other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I get around people like Amy Helm or Ruthie Foster or somebody like that who just absolutely blows me away, and I love hearing them sing. So it's just yeah, I guess I still feel like I'm still finding my voice, but the one I've got right now, I'm happy with.
That's the second time this week that somebody brought up Amy Helm on the podcast, and
She's a badass.
she's so good, man. She's
Yeah.
so good. She played the here in Live Oak, Florida. We have Spirit of the Swanee Music Park, which if you've never played, man, like that festival would be so perfect for you. There's two Roots festivals. There's the one in the spring and one in the fall, and Amy played there one time, and of course, the famous last name.
Yeah.
But for folks listening, she's Levon's kid, but just powerhouse singer. I
Yeah.
mean, and performer. I mean, just unbelievable what she's able to do. That's really interesting. It's the second time somebody's brought her up. So with the you mentioned, and this is something I wanted to talk to you about, that like when I listen to this record, it's my entry point to your music, and then I'm going back and listening to the other records,
Mhm.
and just sonically, it is quite different from the others. Can you talk about that decision and like how that came to be that this one, it's still, I mean, the through line is there with all of
Mhm.
your records, but it does sound different.
Yep. So Josh, the producer, we've been friends for a long time. Kind of always talked about, maybe working with each other very, very lightly. And then he sent an email one day, and he had the band in his head and the whole concept of who he wanted to play and how he wanted to approach the record. Of, he's always dug the points in my show when things kind of chill out, and the softer tone comes out of the voice. He said he wanted to build an album around that, not do the big voice, not do the big not lay on the guitar so heavy kind of thing. And that sounded like something I wanted to do. I love the idea of it, and love the players that he brought in, and we both had the idea of working live off the floor, which I love that. We did it in my studio at my place, no headphones. It was a really fun way to record, and the musicians hadn't heard the tunes before, so it was all, let's just nice and organic. And yeah, it was great. No, I mean, 6 of us in a room with no headphones meant we were all playing just about as quiet as we could, and then crank the mics up, and it just sonically just made for a really sweet sounding album, I think, really.
Man, that's great. I didn't know all of that, but it makes a lot of sense now that I think about, my several listens to the album. It makes a lot of sense that's how you did it. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were very comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, making music with people is I've done albums where I've done a lot of overdubs, and
Mm.
I dig it and I see the benefits to it, but I don't enjoy it nearly as much as actually being in the room and creating, and people feeding off each other, and people coming up with parts on the spots. You can, for me, I feel like in an album, if people have thought about it too much, you can kind of start to feel that. And
Mm.
I like the spontaneity of doing a record like that. And it takes the right players, but everybody's in the right headspace. It was just across the driveway from my house. I'd go over my slippers and track. It was great. I loved it.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've talked a little, like, it's really cool to me that how collaborative it seems like your whole process is, but from the co-writing to the playing the whole thing seems like it's a team kind of effort with you, even though your name is on it, and most of the touring is going to be you and a guitar. How do you sort of, I don't know if vet is the right word, but like, how do you sort of decide who's going to be a part of your process? Who the
Right.
players are that come into the picture?
For this album, a lot of that I leaned on Josh, on the producer. He kind of had the idea of who the players were before he even brought, the idea of the album to me. And so I leaned on him quite a bit. Everybody I knew for the most part, but hadn't actually worked with. And I took more the approach like if it doesn't work, it doesn't need to be released. It's just it's a very, I don't know, fortunate position to be in, but it's like, it's recorded at my place, so costs were lower. So if it didn't work, it didn't work. But I really felt it was going to. And anytime I work with a producer, I kind of let go of the wheel quite a bit. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of having people in the room with you. If you're going to tell them what to do, you might as well just do it yourself. You're kind of losing
Mm.
that. You're losing the input. You're losing their creativity. You're losing their influence. And it kind of kills a vibe of, you know, having a team if you're going to do it all by yourself anyway.
That's great, man. Were there things that have positioned you in your life? Maybe experiences you had as a young person, or maybe just experiences you've had in your life in general that got you to that point where you are so comfortable in trusting people creatively.
Uh, I guess I've always had people who I could trust, which is a benefit, and Josh and I had a lot of talks of how we thought the album would go down and what we were looking for. We sent each other ideas of albums we liked the sound of and the approach they took, and the players on the album too. He worked with a lot of them. And he knew Josh and I vibe wise hit it off really quick as far as like I know if I was in a room what Josh would be thinking about a situation that's going down, which is a good position
Mm.
to be in. And in that situation, the producer's on your side, always on your side, and you've got to realize that they are in this for themselves. And so yeah, no, it just kind of gets this letting yourself be open to wounds if you're going to. You can just accept you might get some lumps, and if you get them, you got to deal with them. But I don't expect them, but you just gotta. I don't know. If I tried to play it safe, that wouldn't be any interesting at all. I don't think.
Oh, I love that. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Like I just mentioned how I quit my job, and probably wasn't the most prudent thing to do, but I knew it was right for me, right? And I
Mhm.
knew I had to do it, and there are a number of factors that led up to the decision. I didn't make it lightly, but it was a huge risk, and right now I'm really leaning into taking risks and not regretting the consequences of those
Mhm.
risks, right? I mean, they're calculated risks.
Yeah.
It's not recklessness, but
Mhm.
just being bold, I think, is a better
Yeah.
way to put it, right? And it
Mhm.
sounds like what you did here was you had a bold idea, you went for it, and the consequence was you have this gorgeous record that people are definitely going to connect with. So that's awesome, man. That's really, really cool. Um, I can't believe we've already been talking like 45 minutes. Um, we usually start to wrap things up with like what you're getting down on. So that's the art that has you
Right.
fired up at the moment.
Mhm.
It could be music you've been listening to. It could be a book you're reading. Like, what's got your attention right now?
Honestly, my big thing is I pick up cookbooks constantly on the road. That's just something I love to have because that's when you're on the road, so much of that is out of your control of what you've got to put into yourself. But when you get home, you're in total control. And musicians, if you've done the road at all, you're spoiled. When you can go from when you show up to a town, they put you in the back room with the mop and they give you a band menu to go from, which is like one salad or one chicken finger kind of thing. Then you go to some places where they try to show the absolute best they've got from their community, from their town. They want to show you the best time. So we really get spoiled that way, and get to go to all these cities that are just amazing. So trying to bring that home and make that when I get home for my friends and my girlfriend, that's a big thing that takes up a lot of my time. I always got books and my girlfriend says if I'm watching videos in the room by myself on my phone, she knows what I'm looking at. It's watching somebody make tamales or something like
She's not worried about you like on a
that.
Pornhub or something. She's
Right? I'm
like,
not on, I'm not on TikTok looking at 14-year-old girls. It's like no, I'm
yeah. Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, I haven't talked about this on the podcast in a while, but I've been cooking a lot lately for myself. It's a weird thing when you're with somebody for a long time because like I was kind of the primary homemaker in my
Mhm.
relationship for 10 years. Like I was the one who cooked dinner and took care of the dogs and all that kind of stuff. For the most part, I did all that kind of thing. And I love that stuff, like, because it's like an act of service. And I think with feeding someone, like that is such a labor of love, right? And there's
Mhm.
the creative aspect to it too. And I haven't talked about that in a long time, but I feel like a lot of songwriters and musicians get really into cooking, and but I never heard it quite like you were just saying it, how like you're able to, since you're touring so much, you're able to experience all these towns that have these, excuse me, different cultures, and the food is a part of their culture, and
Mhm.
that's really interesting. I'm curious, as you were saying that, um, how much does how sort of the venue treats you in terms of the food options that they provide
Mhm.
impact your booking? Like, are you like, I'm not going back to the one chicken tender place again?
No, I mean that stuff. It's everybody's trying to make a buck, right? I mean, I learned that early on that I'll work more if people make money off of me. So
Mm,
I totally respect that part of the a part of the part of the process. My only consideration when it goes to going back to a place or not is the quality of the show.
mm,
If I'm playing a place where they don't know enough to not make blender drinks while we're doing a soft song, that's not the kind of place I want people to come and you know and take in my show. That's not doing me any favors. It's not doing the audience any favors. So that kind of stuff I definitely take in. But when you run into dickheads everywhere, you run into people who aren't fun to work with. But as long as the show goes off, that's my main thing. But if the show's sour, then I don't want to go back there again.
yeah,
Chicken
that's
wings or not.
right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean that recognition of and it's tough, man. It's a tough balance. I've been thinking about the commerce aspect of creativity so much lately, especially since I did quit my job and I want to make things for a living, ideally. But at the same time, I've had this luxury of having a full-time job that also gives me a lot of time off where I can make things during that time
Right.
off. And still know that I have a steady paycheck coming in with health insurance and
Mm-hmm.
all the things that go along with that. And so it's kind of scary, to try to go for it right now. But at the same time, it's freeing. It's a really interesting balance. The scary part, I think, the biggest scary part is that blending of commerce and art, and how I, I just don't know how to do it yet. To be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly honest, I don't know how it works yet. What kind of lessons have you learned over time about how to sort of balance those things?
The biggest thing was you've got to realize you're a commodity
Mm,
for sure. That's taking yourself seriously as a business, and still trying to keep yourself free as an artist is a challenge. And that's just more of an internal thing. For me, you've got to not get too caught up. I'm fortunate. I'm in a position now where I have a lot of people to take the business decisions off my shoulders. I've got my tour manager and got my management team, and there's agents all involved who do a lot of that stuff that I used to have to do. Going into a gig and have to do haggle business and then get on stage was the worst.
oh, I
I
bet.
hated that feeling. So talking to somebody, well, how many people are here? How much must I cut? There's more people than you said there was going to be. That kind of thing. That just totally kills the vibe for playing for me. So I'm really fortunate to go into a place now that I don't need to talk business. I just need to talk stage time, which is an absolute luxury. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just realizing that you've. If it was up to me, I'd be playing for beer and nachos everywhere. That's the kind of businessman I am for the most
Yeah,
part.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
So
get
it's
that.
but it's yeah, so having people who take on that role of the business side is really an advantage. And also just realizing that it is a business. If you're going to make a living at it, you've got to have the part of you that has to be business. You can't just all be the artsy side of it.
Wow. All right, one more question for you. And if you need to take time to think about it, I understand. What's the best meal that you've cooked lately? Like, what is something that
Oh
you've just
man.
thrown down and been like, hell yeah, Matt?
The best thing I mean every person says this, but I do a pretty good steak. We've got this.
Sure.
I got a smoker at the house. Got the big green egg. That's a big thing, and I make a pretty wicked mac and cheese. So anytime I get to my favorite kind of thing that I miss. That I don't treat myself to on the road very often is a steakhouse supper because it could be really disappointing or it can be way too much money. So like tonight, we're heading out tomorrow. For the weekend before I fly out. So tonight's last night home. So tonight will be a steak dinner. I make it the way I want it, make it how it's going to make me happy. So I won't be craving it when I get on the road.
I crushed a New York strip last night, man. And
Perfect. Perfect.
yeah, it's funny you said that. Like everybody thinks that they make the best steak. I definitely, because I
But if you
definitely will go
enjoy
to
it,
like a steakhouse and I'll be like,
yeah.
I paid $60 for this steak, and like I could do that shit at home.
Yeah.
The cuts are usually better at a steakhouse is the difference from what I can get here and afford here. But I'm like, yeah, man, I can make a better ribeye than this. Um, but okay, so what's your mac and cheese like? Can you share your mac and cheese process? How do you?
You know, the best tips I can give is make sure you salt your pasta water. People don't do that, so you get tasteless noodles.
Yeah,
That's a big thing. And throw like a smoked Gouda or a smoked cheddar in there with whatever else you're putting in. That's a big part of it too. And yeah, and I don't bake mine. I get mine mixed, put it in the pan, and then I broil it to get a crusty top, and then it's good to go. So you still get it all nice and gooey. It doesn't get that congealed kind of vibe going on. Yeah,
that's
I don't
pretty
know.
similar. Yeah, pretty
The
similar to my
nieces and
process.
nephews
Yeah,
love it, so
that's all that matters. That's all that
that's the
matters
goal.
right there,
Yeah.
man. Matt, it's been such a pleasure, man. The Hammer and the Rose came out today. I'm gonna get this turned around as quickly as I can. This episode, so folks can hear our conversation. I've already been tweeting about it and skeeting about it and threading about whatever. I've been on all the socials talking, singing the praises of this album, and really appreciate your time and energy, man. Gorgeous record. Really thankful for the opportunity to pick your brain about it, and congratulations.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate the chat.
Awesome. All right, man. Have a great rest of your day.
Cheers, man. You too. Take care.
See ya. Matt Andersen, y'all. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank all of you for listening. Stubbyfingers.ca. Yes, that's the actual website for all things Matt Andersen, including physical copies of his wonderful new record, The Hammer and the Rose. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade. Follow us on all the socials, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support The Marinade. Go do that while you're listening, please. It makes a big difference for us and costs so little of your time and energy. Y'all, I recently quit my day job, and I'm trying to give this creative life a full-time go. It's scary, it's risky, but it's fulfilling. And so I thank you for all of your support, for listening and spreading the word. More on that in a minute. Speaking of which, please follow Life's Greatest Hits on all your socials, especially Instagram, so you can get updates about the podcast that I co-host with my dear friend, the amazing songwriter and person, Jordan Foley. We have a new episode on the way very soon. We're actually recording it tomorrow as I'm recording this on Monday, May 5th. We are now 7 episodes deep. Our most recent is about Jason Isbell's Foxes in the Snow. We had an absolute blast making that one, and the feedback has been really encouraging. So make sure to subscribe on your podcast app so you don't miss a thing. And thank you for listening. The response to Life's Greatest Hits has been overwhelming in the best way. So thank you. Keep letting us know what you think. If you really like what we're doing here, there, everywhere, please consider joining the Marinade's Patreon community, where for just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to Patreon exclusive content like our show Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that shape my creative life and provide a window into the process of making the Marinade. I've also been writing essays about creativity and life in general over there. It's a real interactive community. I really appreciate the folks who've just joined, jumping right in. So thank you guys. It's just been, we've had that Patreon almost as long as we've had the show, and it is just a pleasure to get to connect with people over there, above all the noise, right? I'm grateful I get to connect with some of you on Twitter or Blue Sky or Instagram or wherever we might be connecting, but there's something different about the Patreon, which I really appreciate. So if you can swing it, hey, as I said, I just quit my day job and would really like to make creative work my full-time job. Listen, I'm open to sponsorships, but I'd much rather this be a listener-funded operation. So if you've ever been curious about our Patreon, now would be a great time to dip your toe in and see if the water's to your liking. You can try a free trial of Patreon to see if you like it. No pressure. Try it for 7 days. Set a reminder on your phone in case you want to cancel, but keep going if you dig it, and I think you will. If you want to support the show financially, but you don't want to commit to a monthly subscription, I totally get that too. You can Venmo or PayPal us. It's just at The Marinade. We're looking to cover a few festivals this summer like we did last year on my Grounded Summer Tour. That was such a fulfilling trip. Life's Greatest Hits is also looking to go on the road, and these experiences only happen because of the generosity of our listeners. Really, really grateful for each of you who listens and spreads the word, though, because above all, This is a free show, and I'm so thankful that y'all have for almost 8 years. In September, it will be 8 years of episodes, everybody. And I'm planning something special for that will likely be over on the Patreon. So again, one more quick plug for the Patreon. But until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.